All right, everybody, welcome to the 10th NixOS office hours. These office hours happen every other Friday at 3 p.m. America, New York when we can, and that is 2000 UTC. I realized I'd been saying 1900 UTC even after the time change. They're recorded and live streamed on YouTube.
If you'd like to raise your hand to talk, you can use the hand feature, but it's kind of casual this time, so if you can go ahead and talk, maybe that'd be fine. We'll be accepting questions on the IRC, NixOS office hours channel as well. And just so everyone knows and everyone's aware that these calls do have a code of conduct, and it's the contributor government. And I will actually link the summary of what's expected of everyone to respect throughout the call in the Zoom chat and on IRC. Okay, let me do that.
Today, we have a really casual day. As World of Peace mentioned, anybody can come and chat and ask questions about anything you're wondering about. We'll just all be flexible and discuss whatever people are interested in.
Okay, that sounds fab. Okay, we have anything to start with?
Does anybody have an initial burning question they'd like to get going with? All right, well, one thing somebody asked me just this morning was how a commit becomes a channel. And so I figure I will get started with that. I'm just pulling up a couple of windows here to help. And then I will screen share.
This is always a pretty confusing topic for people, because usually if I think contributors tell people on the support channels or on GitHub is oh, the patch gets merged on master or it gets backported and you just have to wait. And that's not actually what happens. It's just the byproduct of that is it looks like a bunch of waiting.
Definitely. World of Peace, could you post the Zoom link into the office hours channel? My pasteboard isn't working. Oh, wait, somebody, they already got it. All right, cool. So, screen sharing. That would be good to do.
Flocky said that that G. Christensen's a bit more silent compared to me. Is his microphone not up all the way?
Checking.
I thought you sounded fine, actually. Perhaps that's your sound, Florian.
Yeah, I could turn it up a little bit. Let me.
Sounds good to me.
Oh, cool.
Oh, okay.
Oops. All right, I'm going to assume it's fine. Actually, complicated. Computers are complicated.
They truly are. They elude me every day. I'm trying to wonder sometimes if I actually like computers or maybe they like me.
Maybe neither.
Maybe neither. Maybe they're just sticking to me.
All right. Okay, so that's a good point. That's pretty complicated, and maybe I don't quite understand all the questions that different people have. So let me. You know what? Let me just start at the beginning at GitHub, and let me know if I'm missing a step. It looks like a lot of the people in chat today or in the call today directly are pretty experienced, and so I will need to be careful that we actually get everybody's perspective.
Exactly. Not spreading any disinformation.
Right. Okay, cool. All right, so the first step, or the first thing to know is when a change is submitted into Nix packages, it's submitted as a pull request against typically the master branch on GitHub. So if we look at this tDesktop pull request, this is just an arbitrary pull request I picked. It's merging into the master branch. And the master branch is what eventually becomes the NixOS unstable and Nix packages unstable user channels. So after Borg does some checking on the code and on the change, and once the contributor merges the package, we have a system called Hydra at hydra.nixos.org, which every 4 hours or so checks out the latest version of master, evaluates all the packages, and then builds everything in the release.nix. Let's maybe I'm pushing my luck trying to open 2 of these at once.
That is true. It does take a bit to load. So
This is actually,
essentially, each package that's in Nix packages gets a Hydra job set.
this is actually suspiciously slow. Oh boy. All right. So this is where it gets a little bit confusing. But for Nix packages unstable, we have this job set called trunk. And you can see here, roughly every 4 hours or so, it starts a new evaluation based on the latest version of master. And that is the commit here on the right side of this input changes is the commit of that repository that's being built. Under configuration, you can see that it's pulling the Nix packages repository, and it doesn't have a specific branch specified, so that defaults to master. Once all these builds get queued, they get distributed to a few, sometimes a few dozen different servers, all of which are quite powerful. And all of the builds, everything that hasn't been built before gets built. Oops, that's not right.
You know, I actually have not seen this part of the Hydra UI before.
Oh.
I have a really hard time navigating. I know enough of the Hydra's UI to use it for my purposes,
Yeah.
but other than that, it's kind of hard to navigate.
Yeah, it's a bit tough and it's a bit slow, so it's a bit hard to explore. Let me skip that and go to a faster way to find this. If you go to status.nixos.org, this is a new website based on a tool called How Old Is. This is the older tool.
I didn't even know about this. When did this happen?
Within the last few weeks.
Oh, so my absence, I didn't notice it.
Yeah, it's quite new. So if you go here, you can see each branch on the left, the current commit of that branch, and then the job set for which in Hydra is building that branch and creating that channel. So for Nix packages unstable, we can see it's in the Nix packages job set and the trunk job, sorry, the Nix packages project, the trunk job set, and the unstable job. This job is just basically a list of packages that we want to ensure build every single time that we issue a release. If any of these have failed, it won't actually update the channel. So yeah. Right now we see CacheX is failing.
This is the part of the Hydra UI that I stalk regularly because I have to make sure everything is building perfectly.
Yeah, this is a really, really great dashboard. And so every one of these X's of whatever sort have to be turn into a check mark and pass before the channel updates. If we were to dig into this, we could take a close look.
That should be fixed.
It should be fixed, but I
think the patch got
I don't think an evaluation has been triggered since.
Yeah, that one's at least fixed. It's been unblocked.
Cool. So if we check out maybe the 1909 job set, that'll show some, oops, wrong link. That'll show some more recent passes, and we can look at a bit different view of the constituents. On the top here is the ID of the evaluation that the report is for. And if it's green, it passed, everything passed. And if it's not green, then it's either not yet done or there was a failure. In this case, there was a failure. Typically from here, if you wanted to look into why, you would click into that and look into the log and try and debug it. One nice way to do that, oops, that was the wrong link. If I click on that one, it takes me to the specific failing build, is if you click actions, you can click reproduce locally, and it gives you a shell script that you can run to reproduce exactly what Hydra ran. And that can be pretty helpful if you're debugging like an annoying test of some sort. So after Hydra has, go ahead.
I don't actually ever use that. I think when I first started like looking into like Hydra build failures, I would use that, but I usually look at inputs and what's the commit, and then I check out that commit in my
Sure.
fork and then just build the package.
Yeah. So that's a also excellent way to do it.
That's the pro user way.
Yeah. And if you were to download this shell script and look at it, it would essentially do exactly that, actually. And so you could learn a little bit about how that works through there. So after, as a separate system, there is a server that every few minutes checks Hydra to see if that tested job set has finished. Or rather, not tested job set, but the job set listed here has finished. So if we go to status.nix.org and then click Grafana, there's a dashboard on Grafana called Scheduled Task State. And here we can see the history of each of these services checks to see if that job listed on the status.nixos.org page is finished. And if it does, it creates a tarball and uploads it to nixos.org/channels.
I should probably look at this later. You sometimes send me links to like a Grafana graph. I'm like, I don't know what that means exactly. I struggle to parse graphs visually.
I would, so I'm also not a good designer of metrics and graphs. So I would love to work together to make these better.
That's actually a possibility. I might take up that offer.
Yeah, there's another dashboard here called Channel Updates, and this tracks the state of all of the channels that are currently out there.
I heard of this one. I actually love this graph, actually. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, so this one, current channels, is showing the age of each channel. We can see that over the past 7 days, we've had pretty good success getting almost all the channels have updated at least once every 2 days, except for Nix packages unstable, which World of Peace says should be fixed. And then there's also this old channels down in the bottom left, which shows how old all the unmaintained end of life channels are. And it's perhaps not so useful because it goes from 0 nanoseconds to 33 weeks. At any rate, so that's I guess pretty good overview. I'm hoping that's a useful overview for how this channel update processes.
So a Hydra build happens, but like, how does that get distributed? Like, when the channel updates, what's the process that kicks in when the channel gets updated? Like, I think we should probably mention like NixOS channel scripts.
Sure. Yeah. That's a great point. So
like I remember Elko mentioning about there's a copying process that happens here from Hydra to I forget what it is.
Yeah. So there's 2 repositories here if you want to get into the nitty-gritty. There's NixOS org configurations. This has our network and all our monitoring and all of our infrastructure documented in public.
That's the beauty of NixOS.
And then there's the NixOS channel scripts, which are essentially the program that runs each time one of these tasks executes. And it's called mirror NixOS branch. And it's a Perl script, but it's not a big Perl script, so I wouldn't stress too much about it. Just scrolling down into the meat of the matter. The first step, I'm not actually sure this is going to be super helpful. But so the first step is this fetch. And what that's actually fetching is defined by this channels.nix in the root of the NixOS org configurations. And we have these job links. And above that, we say it's looking for hydra.nixos.org/job, and then this value, and then latest finished. So let's go to one of those. Nope.
Well, it was worth a try.
There we go. So you'll notice it redirected me to this build/ID. What's happening there is that redirect looks for the most recent evaluation. Let me go over to the list of evaluations. The most recent evaluation where there are no builds, where every single build has completed. It doesn't have to all pass, but there just can't be any queued or in progress builds. So the latest one that has completed, which is where this job has also passed. It then fetches that data. It does a little bit of checking to make sure that this isn't going back in time. So if you were to, for example, update the channel to a revision and then restart some jobs, that latest link would point back in time. So we make sure it never rolls back in time. We write out some metadata to the channel that is used by a couple of different tools. And this is probably not so helpful, but I guess this is an interesting bit, is that we download some build products from the build jobs and then upload those to S3. So those are always available. Does
It
this
seems
exist?
Samuel there had had a point here about, I think it's actually pretty good, is that a good point could also be, what is a channel? Like, when it comes down to it, what is a channel to the user when it reaches them?
Yeah.
It's just a
Yeah,
copy of Nix packages that's its
that's a
particular job set evaluation is like completed and all the tested job sets are successful, right?
That's exactly right. Exactly right. So, and that's what we see here. So, this download file step fetches a tarball of the Nix expressions and uploads it to the channel. So, when you fetch the channel from nixos.org, you're just fetching a snapshot of Nix packages from a certain point in time and extracting it to your system. You have a full copy of Nix packages on any system which is using Nix packages. That's a really good question. And so a channel, essentially any URL that has Nix, default.nix inside of it can be treated as a channel.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it's worth noting that it's a bit more than just a copy of Nix packages. So the code below there adds a few things like programs.sqlite database. Yeah, and it does some things like generating debug info, but that's not actually part of the channel. So the programs.sqlite thing is really the main thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. So generating the programs.sqlite. This, if I remember correctly, this is a index of all the free executables in Nix packages, right?
Yeah, it's all the bin directories. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is used by the command not found command. So if you mistype something or you try to run something which doesn't exist, it runs this little program that looks in programs.sqlite and tells you what package you can find that command in.
Yeah, that's excellent call out. That this is also where that command not found support comes from.
Yeah, this is a bit of an issue if so ultimately we want to get rid of channels and replace them by flakes, which are essentially just pointers to the Git repository. So we get rid of this whole generating a copy of Nix packages. But then we have to figure out what to do with programs.sqlite. So I haven't really thought about that very much.
Yeah, we'll see. Thank you. Cool. How about that? Does that satisfy that, World of Peace?
Yep, I think that sounds pretty good.
Cool.
I'm now realizing that I'm thinking my NixOS is probably messed up because I don't use a channel, so I'm not sure how that programs.sqlite file is there and how command not found works, but we'll just ignore that.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you there. I do want to say though that you don't strictly need to use channels, in the sense that I'm not sure what happened there. In the sense that any directory of Nix packages will work just fine for using Nix packages. The advantage of using these channels is that they have, like we pointed to, a large list of tests and validation to ensure that they're safe for running your system on. But if you were to say check out this, not that one, but this revision of Nix packages, it would be just as good as using it through the channel, with the caveat as of the program indexes.
So Samuel also has another great topic here. Yes,
Yeah.
I think I did that properly this time. Also mentioned also how channels work on the system tangibly, like how it maps to Nix path. Does that make sense to explain? Is it compared to using Nix path equal Nix packages home and Nix packages checkout to actually using a channel? It's actually a great point. Like, is the Nix path value different for when someone is using a channel versus if they want to use a git checkout or a URL?
Sure. Is that something you'd be comfortable demonstrating?
Possibly not, because I'm not sure I can even understand what I just said.
yeah, that's okay. So the only trouble is I can't super easily share a terminal right now. But if perhaps there's another question and we can come back to that in a couple minutes.
That sounds fine. Unless someone would like to explain it who knows a bit more. Well, understands the question a bit more, the explanation.
I think the question was about how does the Nix search path, so the Nix path environment variable, interact with channels?
I think so. I think that's what Samuel said. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, so it's a pretty ad hoc interaction. So if you look at that environment variable on NixOS, it just contains an entry which is something like Nix packages equals, and then /Nix var Nix profiles per user root channels NixOS. So if you reference Nix packages between angle brackets, that resolves to the system-wide Nix packages channel. So if you're not using that channel, then that probably doesn't point to anything. So probably you either have a local override, or you're not using Nix path.
Yep, that sounds like a plausible explanation.
So I have a terminal now. All right, it's kind of low contrast, I apologize, but we can do this anyway. So if we look at my Nix path, we have this def expr channels and then a specific Nix packages equals and then root /channels /NixOS, and then this NixOS config stuff that we'll just ignore for now. And the something interesting to cover here is this Nix packages equals syntax is what is used when using these angle brackets in a Nix expression. So if we do Nix packages, it points to exactly that same path that was defined in the Nix path. And you can also use subpaths with these angle brackets. So NixOS, release.nix, all of these things work just fine. So the next thing is the Nix packages equals profiles per user root channels. So that is the root user's channel. And so if I Nix channel -- list, we see I have this NixOS channel, and it's set to 1909. If I do Nix channel -- update, it will download a new copy of that from nixos.org. But also, I don't need to use that at all. I could do Nix packages equals, oh boy. I'm going to get this wrong, so I'm not going to try to get it wrong. Just one moment while I look up a URL. So I could use a URL like this. And this time when I import Nix packages, it automatically fetches this tar.gz from GitHub and then makes that available for Nix expressions. So, oops. I didn't do that right. Oh boy. All good things that we cover another time. Toby is saying that it'd be nice to have a word to describe this angle bracket path syntax. And
That's a very good point. It's a syntax that's in the language that doesn't actually have a name.
Ilko, do you have a name for this?
No, just yeah, search path. Look at so it's just inspired by C includes. So
oh, cool.
In C, if you put an include between angle brackets, it's looked up in some system-wide search path.
Gotcha. All right.
That's actually an excellent example. That I might even absorb that into the documentation somewhere.
Definitely manual.
If it's not already.
Uh-oh. I can't type. Oh, there we go. And this is this exact same Nix path method. So if I did sometimes I can't type. I'm not sure why. Well, I'm going to stick to master. Oh boy. So the other thing to know is that this Nix path is also used for NixOS rebuild. And so you very much don't have to use channels. You could explicitly set Nix path. You can also use, I can't type a dash character, so I can't actually show it, but a dash capital I, Nix packages equals something. And that would change what NixOS rebuild uses for building your system. I'm going to stop sharing this window because I can't type most characters I want to type. Any more questions about, oh, I have one more thing about channel updates. Once the channel updates, there's two Git repositories are pushed to. The first one, this one is deprecated, but probably what most people are familiar with, is nixpackages.channels. And when the channel updates, a new branch, the branch corresponding to the channel name is pushed to with the revision that the channel is moved to. This is probably, I believe this is a deprecated method and replaced with branches on the Nix packages repo itself, where we have NixOS-1909. Those aren't my branches. But other NixOS Nix packages those are channel branches that are only updated by Hydra or by that channel update script on a regular basis. Anyway, so this has been like 30 minutes of our office hours, and I really don't want to take up all of our time. Anything else people would like to discuss?
Other ideas were like Google Summer of Code submission ideas, or like where we left off with any tangential like topics about Rust and Nix. Those sort of things, or if anyone has something they would like to talk about.
Ilko, have you seen the CXX project for type safe FFI bound? Zimbatum?
Oh yeah, I just started playing with Bridge to bridge different type of chat networks. It's more like a community thing, but we could potentially bridge the IRC channel with some other type of chats if we want to be more welcome to other. I don't know. Some people don't like IRC for some reason, so I was just gonna mention that.
That's cool. So what does that do? Can you say a bit more? Like how does it
Yes,
work and stuff?
it's basically a bot that you install on all of the networks. So let's say you have Slack and you have IRC, and then the bot just multiplexes the messages or forwards them from one network to the other.
That sounds pretty interesting. I'd love to hear more. Where can we learn more?
So I had to do some advertisement, but I just set it up for next Friday. So that's the stream I'm running. So on the IRC next-Friday channel, the bot is running. And then it's also running on my Twitch accounts. So I can bridge those two.
Advertisement is welcome here, Zimbatum. Apparently, we're all becoming popular streamers somehow.
Yeah. So next Friday is just a stream I'm doing to teach about NixOS, but the format is a bit different. It's about teaching one person at a time, and then other people can just listen to the one-on-one if you want.
I'm really glad that you've been doing those. I think that's a really, really nice way to help some people, and I hope it has really good results.
Yeah, I think at least I'm having fun doing it. So if it's useful to other people, then it's good.
Yeah, definitely. Very good. Well, thank you. I was actually going to call out Nix Fridays at the end of it.
All right. Thanks.
It's typically in our agenda.
Yeah, I did call out NixOS office hours as well. And Petty is doing a stream as well. He's talking about Haskell packaging at the moment.
It seems I don't want to like coin that we set a trend, but I'm just gonna give myself and say that we've set a trend. I hope that doesn't sound condescending.
No, it's fine. We talked about this with Graham at some point. And yeah, I mean, the only thing is we're all doing it on Friday for some reason.
Because Friday is really the best day. I've talked about probably 4 people about this. It's like if you choose Friday to be a good day, then it's a good day for everyone because you made it that way.
Yeah, Friday is the chill day.
Totally.
So, sorry, would it be okay to change topic?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely fine.
Has anybody looked into the Rust project CXX for FFI between Rust and C++? It seemed like perhaps a interesting alternative to porting piecemeal Rust Nix to Rust.
Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. And apparently has even move value semantics between Rust and C++. So that's pretty cool.
Feels like might be pretty perfectly timed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe I'll be able to check it out this weekend. No, not this weekend. Maybe next weekend. Cool.
When I saw the library, I was thinking like my outsider perspectives. Obviously, don't know much of many things about Rust, but it seemed that a lot of like the complaints about it being used seriously in Nix would be helped by this if we had it like really nice.
Definitely.
So Tobias said, so PRs for using it to interface the existing REST are welcome, I guess. So if someone were to try to contribute that, maybe that'd be a welcome sort of thing. I do think it's still like very early stage.
I think that's a question for you, Ilko.
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch that. That what is early?
Would it be, well, would pull requests to Nix using CXX be interesting to you?
Yeah.
Cool. There you go, Toby. I'm ready to see them.
Exactly. Bring them on. We do have the whole little thread we started, Ilko, for questions about Rust and Nix. It was almost I hope it didn't come off as like an unintentional ask Ilko anything about Rust, because that's not exactly, you didn't agree to that. But there is a bit of activity there.
Right.
Cool. Aaron, would you be interested in talking a bit about what you're thinking with regards to HTTP service abstractions?
Yeah, sure, Graham. Earlier today, there was a bit of a conversation about different web backends, the Nginx versus the HTTPD web server, and some of the web services we have in NixOS. Pretty much all the web services right now, they either use Nginx or HTTPD. They don't have any sort of backend for that. Some of them have sort of been set up to potentially expand to offering either or in the future, but as it stands right now, it's one or the other. So some people, they prefer one web server or the other, and if they try to run a service that is using the opposite to what they run, obviously you're going to have port conflicts and whatnot, and you just want to sort of simplify and have one web server, which makes sense. So somebody was talking about a Google Summer of Code opportunity, and I said that's something that's been talked about a lot in the past. I think it was Kalis had mentioned that there hadn't been a lot of traction on it, but it's definitely something that's of interest to me if somebody's going to sort of tackle that. But I think there's just a lot of issues to sort of work through before somebody can go ahead and implement that. But it sparked some conversation. It seemed like there was more than just a couple of people who were interested in that, but I don't know if anybody had any ideas on that.
So my initial reaction was a bit negative.
Yep.
I feel that these different web servers have a whole expressive configuration format unique to their own because they feel like they have a different abstraction that makes more sense or works better for their platform. And I came up with a pretty perhaps obscure, but maybe not impossible scenario. Can you talk a little bit about like the scope? Like what scope would this abstraction have? How far do you want to go? What kind of support? What sort of customization would you support versus not support?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, if you did like a full abstraction where you could just sort of say this is like a web service, or a web server dot, this dot that, locations, things like that, that would be obviously great from a module author standpoint, but there's a lot of problems with that. So for example, permissions are done dramatically different between Nginx and Apache. That's one issue to start with. Maybe it's as simple as just writing multiple backends for each of these web services or web applications that we want to provide. You could go to one extreme or the other, or you could go somewhere in between. I don't know what the answer is, but it's a question I've thought about a little bit, not enough to have any strong opinions one way or the other yet. But I do see that historically it was talked about a few years ago, and you could see several GitHub issues or PRs that are sort of talking about it. And yeah, it hasn't really taken off yet, but maybe that's just because the right person hasn't tackled the problem yet.
So, okay, answer me this. Why do you use Apache? Like, why not just use Nginx like everybody else?
Fair question. Fair question. So a lot of people think that Nginx is just hands down better. It's not something I really grew up with, and where I work, there's zero possibility of ever switching to Nginx. So anytime I put into Nginx, it's kind of a waste of my time, to be honest. So I'm in the Apache world, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So I guess just double down.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think that's a completely reasonable point to have. As Samuel DR mentioned on the IRC channel, that everybody just using Nginx produces a monoculture, and it's typically not wanted to have a monoculture in that sort of way.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Generally, I
go ahead.
generally I support a lot of old software, long-term software, things like that. So I definitely not in the mainstream of NixOS users in that sense. A lot of people doing bleeding edge things, but to me, NixOS provides a lot of value in stable environments, and so I'd love to see things continue growing that way.
I think that's really great.
Can I add something on the topic? I see a lot of similarities with how Kubernetes does things, where they have an ingress controller. And this is, so you define an ingress, which is a generic resource that maps from a path to a service. And then the ingress controller is generic, and you can replace with Nginx or Apache or any type of service. And in that specific context, the interface is very restricted. So you can only map, I think, a path prefix to a service, or maybe a host to a service, or like a combination of both. But that's the reduced sort of interface that you might want to have. And in that scenario, maybe, for example, if you set up MediaWiki, then MediaWiki might run with Apache because PHP runs better with Apache, let's assume. And then you would have your router in front that says, okay, the /MediaWiki or /wiki goes to MediaWiki, and that might be Nginx, for example. So is that something that makes sense to you, Anders?
Yeah, I see what you're getting at there.
So it would be maybe a bit more work because you would have to plug each services manually to a path, but that would maybe give you the expression power that you want.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, we just have about a minute left. Any last minute comments on service abstractions or other quick questions? I guess from my perspective, the idea of having a limited interface, which lets you abstract the 80%, seems really like a great idea. I think that's a really great idea. So thank you for working on that. I hope that I hope you continue to do that, and I hope it becomes successful.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Well, let's call it a wrap. It's 45 minutes or so.
This is the closing.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming today. Sorry for the unclear communication for the one 2 weeks ago. We were both not in very good spots to be doing a hosted video call.
Yeah, I had to go into hibernation and crystallize.
Yeah, I'm sure a number of us can appreciate that feeling.
Exactly.
The next office hours will be January 24th, 2020. Made sure to write that 2020 properly. Nix Fridays, hosted by Zimbotum on, is that every Friday or every other Friday? Don't remember. Well, you can find out.
It's every Friday.
Perfect.
Every Friday.
Every Friday. And you can find out more at zimbatm.com/NixFriday. Is that right? I think I got that right. Yeah, with a capital N and a capital F. And also Peter Simmons, maintainer of the Haskell package set. Also, he's on Twitter as @originalpeti, P-E-T-I. Does a weekly Friday stream of working on the Haskell package set. With that, I'll see y'all in a couple weeks. Thank you all
Yep.
so much.
Bye. We boosted all our friends. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.